Inizio immediatamente la...
So, good evening to you all. Thank you for having been with us. I'll open the press conference if you have any questions for the Mr. President and the CEO. I see a question over here. Please stand up, introduce yourself, and say which paper. Alessandro Capazzo, Radio Coro. I wanted to ask something that emerged during the shareholders meeting. I don't know whether any replies regarding the possible options for gas and power. Are there any novelties, anything new? No. For gas and power, maybe you mean retail gas. No. Then no. Unfortunately, comment off, Michael. There was a question of dividing. No, that was an article. It was based on assumption. Nothing we ever said. What we had said during our strategy is that retail gas, distribution for civil use, therefore, would be something very focused a company, because I think we can extrapolate great value with specific skills and not dilute it in a company that is essentially involved in something quite different. We do oil and gas, and we're the only big company that has a retail gas, which we like very much, but we'd like to focus even more on this, and probably we are just thinking about this, but there isn't anything scheduled in the short term. And all the gas related business, B2B, LNG, trading, are part and parcel of ENI. There is a question over here in front of us, and then over there. Yes. Good evening. Goffredo Galezzi of La Staffetta. I wanted to ask, does this reviewing of financial statement reporting fall into the strategy? So separating some activities, because there's been a review trading, oil products, gas and power, chemicals with refining and marketing. So there has been a review of the financial statements, even though the results are more or less the same. Well, in terms of financial statements, things are more or less the same. There's been an organizational review, and as explained, this is tied to the fact that over the past 15 years, ENI has transformed its business. It has lost some important cash flow generators, such as Namarete Gas, because over the past 7 years, the market has changed from a structural viewpoint, gas and power especially. And so we have set up a more streamlined company, and in fact, we have cut, and thanks to this, we'll be able to cut 500 million euros in total per year. That's savings per year over a 4-year period. So this is tied to the change in the business structure. So it's a shorter organization, more compact. We've shifted from a division-based model. Divisions are like many different companies, and we've moved on to a sort of integrated company model where we have a centralization of all the technical, scientific parts, and we have centralized various units, skill-based units. So we've set up some competence centers. That is really the main reason. So all the world around us has changed, and this has allowed us to pool some units that have some important synergies. Francesca Paggio, over there. Good evening, Francesco Paggia of Lanza. I wanted to go back to the issue of Algeria. Do you have any remarks to make regarding the fact that the ex-president of Saipem Algeria has decided to plea bargain? No, I have no comments. We were here all day, so I have no comments to make at any rate. A question here up in the front.
Lorenzo.
Lorenzo Totoro, Bloomberg News, you spoke regarding our presence in Libya about signs of lesser tension. Can you say something more to this regard? And then a curiosity, over the years and with the migration crisis becoming worse and worse, has there been any interaction in terms of communication logistics between your platforms, offshore platforms, and the forces monitoring and supervising the rescue operations for vessels? I don't know, do you have any anecdotes or anything that you'd like to tell us about? No. I tied these positive signs to the will of the Libyan people to start talking for years. There was just tension, there have been wars. Some tension persists on the field peripherally, but the forces have come together on various occasions. So there's an underlying fatigue, so to speak, and a desire to seek a solution. Of course, the most critical element is terrorism in this case, and I'm talking about the terrorist attacks that have taken place. But within Libya and outside Libya, the attention and the desire to find a solution has increased, and it's very strong on the part of the Italian government, very strong. The Prime Minister is working directly to find some solutions, diplomatic and negotiations related solutions, to have a national government in Libya. And I see that Europe too is much more interested, and that is why I talked about signs of improvement that I say, because I've seen and noticed these things at the local level, but I have no specific anecdotes to refer on migration flows. Yes, sometimes they travel close to our platforms, but it's not so easy to see them because the sea doesn't have that great visibility, and they often go past in the nighttime, so I have nothing specific to tell you. And if you were asked for logistic support, would you be in favor? Well, what do you mean? We have fixed platforms for safety reasons. You can't approach or climb a platform to go. It's, a platform isn't a vessel. It's a small plant. There are some production processes. You have to do safety courses, and there's very little room on the platforms. It's a place that can be even dangerous if you don't know it personally. So we can't offer room to anyone on these platforms. A question over here, Alberto Sis. You spoke about this decision and the shift to coal on the part of Europe to the detriment of gas. What is the opportunity to intervene, and how confident are you about being able to change Europe's mind? Well, it's not a decision that came from top bottom. It's a market-driven decision. Very simply, European gas, the price of European gas was very high, 3 times the American price, even though there is a hub. We have a European hub. So those who have to engage in power and we don't have, if we have a coal-fired plant, well, they purchase the coal. This is happening in Europe, in Eastern Europe, and in Central Europe too, and Italy as well. So it's not that you can't say, okay, don't use coal. You have to create situations, and in this case, situations, you have to regulate the system. Emission trading, costs on emissions, or carbon tax, or carbon pricing, which are the most fashionable, the buzzwords. And these sketches have to become an outfit, and we have to wear an outfit that will make us reduce our emissions, so to speak. And so it's an underlying issue here. We believe to be wrong to invest, I say invest, not spend, in subsidies over 60 billion per year to promote renewables, which I think is correct, but on the other hand, not regulating coal, which is the most polluting of fuels, and not polluting of energy sources. It is something that needs to be fixed through carbon pricing or emission trading. So a sort of stock exchange system of emissions, which isn't working right now because every share of the emissions market is devalued, is worth very little. But in my view, these are the solutions. They have to be regulatory. And of course, they involve a price because, of course, if you don't use coal, you have to use gas, and you have to create some situations where we can have this transformation, this change. But if we want to cut emissions by 40% in 2030, we can't go on using coal and bring coal back to what it was back in the 70s. No. Integrating east and west, north and south with the gas network. Would we reduce the price differential between gas and coal, and by how much? Well, let's say that the price of gas would go down. Coal will cost, since it comes from the US, will always cost less. And so that's why we need to create an efficient system, as I was saying, in terms of rules, but also in terms of storage and transport. And this will obviously help cut up gas prices. And this is, above all, a system that is needed for energy security. Italy needs to, or rather, Europe needs to pool everything it has because we are net importers. We don't have own resources. So those who have resources that aren't their own cannot afford not to be efficient, not to be effective, and not to pool everything. We can't keep talking about Europe. You're going to have 28 energy markets. It means destroying the industry. We don't have primary resources. We are not pooling energy. So how can we promote our growth? Well, it's obvious that we'll, fall on this, we'll trip on this. So we need to make an effort to create a single market for energy security, for gas prices, and a single market also means rules. Because besides creating a market, since we are the most virtuous in environmental terms, we have to establish rules with regard to environmental parameters, protecting competition, of course, but obviously selecting the energy mix and appropriately. Raffaella Bruno.
Good evening, Raffaella Bruno, Sky News. I don't remember whether you have already mentioned figure statistics. I would like to ask you whether you, like other big Italian companies like Telecom, Fiat, and Enel, do you have a plan to hire young people to take advantage of the new provisions in the Jobs Act? No, we didn't provide any figures and statistics because we are now hiring people. We are hiring people from university, from master courses, which we organize. We are very much involved in a huge industrial change and transformation. Our commitment is to have this industrial transformation take place without reducing jobs. So this is a kind of internal netting. It is, as I was saying before during the assembly meeting, the transition from an operational situation, which we are reducing, with streamlining, to another situation. We are opening in Gela an excellence center in terms of health on the job, job safety. So we are training people. We are carrying out refreshing courses. So we are trying to keep our system as compact as possible without having to send people away. We are hiring a lot of new employees, human resources. We are not doing it only in Italy. As you know, we make an effort in Italy, but we are hiring people over the world because in most of our activity is abroad. But since the most important investments by countries is in Italy, we are hiring people in Italy. We haven't yet mentioned statistics or figures. We will mention them once this restructuring operation of the other sectors will be completed. A question by Eric Silva. Good afternoon. A few days ago, maybe, I do not know whether it was confirmed by OPEC, but it was published that OPEC is providing for the next decade to have Brent prices to reach maximum $100. You stressed again your forecast that Brent will reach $90 over 4 years. Do you have any comment to make on this OPEC forecasts, which are slightly longer than yours? I read about OPEC and their forecasts by the Wall Street Journal and rejected or denied by OPEC. Yesterday, they spoke of 25-year forecasts, which is not that simple, I would say. We think that there is a gradual growth, that there's going to be a gradual growth. We still keep these forecasts at 70, 85 versus $90 because fundamentals alone, without intervention of OPEC. What I think that since the system is now a fluctuation, since we no longer have the OPEC guidance, OPEC can no longer issue the guidance. They can do it, but I don't want to do it, to give it, because outside OPEC there is somebody else who has spare capacity. The big change in the past 4 cycles, which we experienced, is this. We had an entity before which had spare capacity and therefore could reduce or increase. It was Saudi Arabia, but basically it's OPEC. Now we have a different identity. We have shale oil now. It's a small amount. It represents 3% of world resources versus 78%. But it's like being faced with a marathon runner, OPEC, conventional area, and the sprint runner, shale oil. The sprint runner, because you must think that over a year, in the last 3 years in the United States, shale oil have increased production by 1 million barrels per day, which is incredible in terms of investment in conventional sector. It would take 7, 8, 9 years and billions of investments within intense industrial activity. Shale oil has increased production by 1 million barrels per day. So we are faced with a completely different structure, which means that what's the trigger? This production increases until it triggers an average price which makes shale oil be removed. Then we have an increase in supply. If the demand is structurally strong, there is no impact. But if the demand is in an unstable balance, this increase in shale oil might create a reduction. So this could really be W-shaped path for the future. So we are in a different situation. We are no longer in a situation where there is a guidance. Before, investors knew that if it was the price would go down, OPEC would cut production by 4 million and they would invest in this commodity more easily. We are in a kind of fluctuating situation which has its own dynamics and will find its own stabilization. Unless we have additional questions, I would like to thank you very much, and until next year, thank you.